Hi everyone, welcome. I'm preparing to check in on my VermiBag Mini and the worms that live in it and the stuff I'm going to be feeding them today. It's been 12 days since they were last fed, so I figured let's go pretty generous. And the sort of stuff they're getting today is stuff that's going to go pretty quick as well. It's a whole bunch of cantaloupe rinds as well as a banana peel in here. I guess all of this stuff started out yellow at one point, but that banana peel has certainly taken on a new color, which I guess tends to happen as the stuff starts to freeze. Or at least that's what happens with my banana peels in my freezer. And I've also got my box of leaves here that we could use to supplement the bedding in this system. The age of the bin at this point is now 72 days. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, this might be feeding number 6 going in today. And the only reason we're kind of at a low feed count in here is because I had set up a camera on the other side of this clear window here to peek into the system, and over the course of about, I'm trying to remember now, 3 weeks maybe? 24 days I think it was. So we had put a pumpkin in here and we gave it to the worms, and things got a little bit dry in here during that time, I think, because the stuff was just out here exposed to the air. Usually I've got a plastic sheet covering things here to keep the moisture from escaping from the system, and I just, a moment ago before starting the camera, I had already removed the plastic cover, so that was just a sort of little preparatory step I took just to see what was going on underneath it. And when I took off the plastic sheet, there were worms cruising all over these couple of coffee filters that we've got down here as feeding zone indicators. So the top surface was nice and damp and the worms were hanging out, which was kind of cool to see. And maybe I should have started the camera sooner so you guys could have accompanied me in that observation. So now I've been trying to see if I can condition my thinking here in this system to resist the urge to probe down deep into the material. The way we started this system 72 days ago was we had emptied 4 yellow buckets in which we had the worms living for 6 months, and then we figured, you know what? One way we can almost guarantee that that the material that comes out on the bottom of this thing when the time comes to harvest the castings from it, one way to guarantee that the castings that come out the bottom at some point in the future are really well worked, fully broken down castings versus castings that are littered with all kinds of not broken down debris and stuff, was to take the contents of a few somewhat mature systems, those 6-month-old buckets, and use that as the starting material. So the stuff that was placed in here 72 days ago was pretty well worked stuff already. Almost what you would consider pretty much finished castings to start with. And I imagine that over time the system will just continue to enable that stuff to mature further, so that at some point in the future when we crack open the bottom flap in order to do a harvest of the castings in here, the stuff that comes out the bottom will be nice, clean worm castings. And the only way we can make sure that that is the case, that the stuff is nice and clean, is if I don't blend all kinds of paper and cardboard and other stuff down into it. So probing down deep, I think, is going to be a no-no in here. I think once in a while we can probe down into the material just to see what's happening, but I think in general resisting the urge to dig down deep is going to be something I'm going to have to make a conscious effort to do, because my tendency is to probe down deep and explore. I wonder if this could be a piece of one of the peaches they got last time. Last time I kind of did almost like a surface feeding, and then I piled some bedding material out on top of that, hopefully paving the way to a new way of feeding this system. Rather than always digging a really deep trench, I'm thinking the better way to do it is the way I see other people feeding these bag systems, which is to kind of feed on the top and then cover that with bedding material. So I think that's the way we're going to try to do stuff in here going forward. I'm going to let stuff settle down here a little bit before we apply the food and the bedding. So give me a moment, I'll be right back, and then we'll get to feeding these guys. I had almost everything that I intend to use as part of the feeding handy already, but I forgot to grab the pulverized eggshell, which is the grit that I use, so I stepped away to go bring that over, and then I figured I would also just give these little guys an extra minute or two to clear out of the scene. The worms will tend to try to skedaddle out of the bright lights because they don't like bright light. And even though I stepped away for quite a few minutes, it seemed like a lot of them are still out here. I mean, true, I did turn this thing upside down, so the ones that were on the upwards facing side of this large pumpkin stem, for the most part, left. So these little guys are actually ones that had already retreated out of the bright lights. This is the largest of all the stems. And I think I did actually break off some chips of it, like I think this pointy chip of it, pointy tip, chip, whatever. I think I chipped off this pointy tip of it not too long ago. Look at all these worms still hanging out on this thing. I've just been allowing these pumpkin stems to go on their own without any help breaking them down. And by help, I just mean kind of crushing things or cracking things open and kind of making things into somewhat smaller particle size when possible to do so, in the interest of, speeding along the breakdown process. And corn cobs always used to sort of get that same treatment too, was just leave them be and let them break down on their own accord. Oops. But my new thing, I guess, these days is to actually help the corn cobs along a little bit by breaking them up when I can. So even though these didn't break so easily, at least I was able to snap them in half and reveal their insides. As you can see, the worms are really enjoying the insides of these corn cobs. So now don't get me wrong, just by not wanting to help the pumpkin stems break down by cracking them and breaking them, it doesn't mean I don't want to see them break down. I want to see them all break down as quickly as possible, which would be nice. But I'm always interested in seeing how certain objects, certain materials take, how long it takes for them in the worm bin to eventually break down on their own without any help. So that's sort of my little curious mind at play. So my idea here for today's feeding was to lay down some of these pieces of cantaloupe melon rind as sort of a foundation for the food. Perhaps even bring in some of these coffee filters, because I do have a replacement coffee filter that we can include as the replacement feeding zone indicator. By putting these down here alongside the foods, it'll just make it that much more likely that the stuff will get consumed as bedding, now that it's nice and seasoned, having been in the system for a while. And then I thought that on top of that melon rind, we could start bringing back all these pumpkin stems. And then at the end, after all the pumpkin stems are stacked up on top of the cantaloupe rinds, we would add even more cantaloupe rinds on top, as well as some of this surplus bedding that remains from the last check-in. It seems like we were pretty generous with the bedding last time, so we'll definitely add some more. I've got leafy material that we're going to add as supplementary bedding today, but I figured let's use some of this stuff over here, some of this existing stuff that's already been in the bin for a while now, to be mixed in with the pumpkin stems, with the cantaloupe, and with the banana peel. Let's not forget the banana peel. Get that in here too. And then this way perhaps we're going to, drive a little bit more traffic in the direction of those pumpkin stems and see the eventual breakdown of those things in time. And then I think there's still a good amount of residual leftover shredded paper and cardboard throughout this system that we can cover up with at the end and then top off with the nice leafy material. And so I've been placing the juicy side down. Perhaps these last few pieces we can position in here with the juicy side up. And I got a feeling the worms are definitely going to appreciate this. Just based on its weight, it feels like it's got a good amount of moisture content to it. This will become our feeding zone indicator at the end. So let's set that aside until after we've gotten things pretty much settled in here. This is my pulverized eggshell. And then before we start stacking in all those nice fresh leaves as sort of a natural top covering material, here we can start bringing in some of this nice seasoned shredded paper cardboard mix. My bedding mix here. And then the worms are definitely going to have a nice environment here to play around in. And then on top we'll just bring in the leafy matter as the supplementary bedding. I keep sort of seeing the bottom edge of this window as sort of the level that I'd like to try to keep things at. Not obstructing it, so that if at some point in the future we want to try doing another time lapse by establishing a kind of the way we did last time, by putting the camera in on the other side of that window and peeking into the system through the window, and it's kind of nice to keep the level beneath there so that we can always use that as a little portal into the activities here in this system. I've had a couple ideas on how we might be able to set up a future new time lapse in here. Been kicking around some ideas. I'm gonna have to work those out a little bit before I could pull the trigger on them. And last but not least comes in the traditional feeding zone indicator, which I don't even know if we used to do many feeding zone indicators down here in the VermiBag Mini. Probably not, but it's kind of a tradition in most of my systems, so I figured let's try to do it here as well. And the one thing you didn't see in the beginning was me removing the plastic cover. As you can see, there's a few worms still hanging out on this thing. I had folded it over to keep it damp, and then I put it under something to keep it dark as well, to keep the worms that were still on it comfortable, prevent them from freaking out and trying to bug out. But now they're back with the rest of their buddies. So that's our check-in with the VermiBag Mini on day 72, I think, getting feeding number 6. If it's incorrect, I'll put some sort of a flash caption on the screen to correct myself if need be. But that's it. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. Alright everyone, thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye now.